Megan here from Soft Solutions. We've got Matt on the line with us as well, and we're really lucky to have Ben from Grandstream with us today, who's going to run us through this launch presentation. So Ben is the ANZ Country Manager for Grandstream, and I'm sure many of you have met him before. So thanks, Ben, for being with us all today so that we can have a look at this exciting new technology, and we'll hand over to you. There will be a Q&A at the end. You can pop any questions in the chat, and then from there we'll try and address all those questions when we get to the end of the presentation. So sit back and enjoy.
No problem, sounds good. Thanks for that, thanks for the introduction. So thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Today we'll be running through the new Grandstream WP810 Wi-Fi cordless phone. One of the first things I should say to everyone, I hope everyone's keeping safe and well during these particularly challenging and unique times that we're all heading through. I know everything's slightly different to what it is normally, so thank you for taking the time out of your day to join today's webinar. So to give everyone a bit of an idea, the agenda today is we'll head through a bit of a product overview, some of the key features, some integrations, a bit of a comparison to DECT. That's always a big thing that I get asked, why someone would look at one over the other. A little bit of competitive analysis, some deployment examples, and then obviously at the end we'll open to a Q&A session. So first of all, a little bit about Grandstream. Some of you may have seen this before, some of you may not. As a business, we were founded in 2002. We started initially with production of good old ATAs and gateways. So right back at the starting of SIP to get everything from analog through to IP. We currently employ over 600 employees globally. That's across a mixture of sales, back of house, manufacture, shipping, R&D, product design. One of the important things to take away from this is all the products that Grandstream sells, we actually design and manufacture ourselves, so we have full control over the whole process. We do not OEM products from any other vendor. We will, of course, make OEM products for other vendors, but anything that we sell under the Grandstream name is designed and manufactured in-house. Our product portfolio contains products within business conferencing, IP phones, gateways and ATAs, obviously. We still ship millions of those every year. We're the largest manufacturer globally of ATAs. Networking devices, which was when we moved into our Wi-Fi networking solutions. We have some offerings in the surveillance and facility access systems, and then obviously the PBX solutions. We primarily serve into the small to medium-sized businesses and consumer markets, although some of our more recent products have been starting to nudge up into the enterprise space and are starting to be picked up and utilised in those environments. Over on the right-hand side of this slide gives you a little bit of an idea of our global locations. So we are a US company. We're US headquartered and US owned. We're headquartered in Boston. We also have a location in LA, which is for developers and also warehousing for North America, and then also in Dallas, Texas, which is more R&D. In China, we run locations in Hangzhou, Shenzhen, which is where we ship from, and also Hong Kong, where we have some warehousing space. We have our support center for EMEA run from Casablanca in Morocco. Our support center for Latin America runs from Venezuela. We have warehousing in the Netherlands, which supports Europe and the Middle East. And then we have, right down the bottom, we have our support center for APAC, which is based in Kuala Lumpur. So that's where our technical support people sit for the Asia Pacific region. So as you can see, quite geographically dispersed, which has many, many benefits, allowing us to fit in around with many different global geographies and also many different time zones throughout the day. So very quickly, the Grandstream mission. Every company likes to have a mission statement. Ours is, we believe in connecting the world. We believe every business, large or small, should have the tools to communicate from anywhere on any device. And then of course, we design products that make this belief become a reality. So very, very important that we're designing tools to allow people to connect. And in the current environment that we're facing, a lot of those tools are being used by some people for the first time. And they're obviously needing expertise of people such as yourselves, our integration channel, to be able to assist them with making the right decisions. So we'll move into the WP810 now, a bit of an overview. So essentially it is a portable cordless Wi-Fi IP phone. Now that's a mouthful. Essentially it is, easiest way to think of it is, it's like a DECT phone, but it connects over the Wi-Fi network instead of using DECT frequency technologies. It supports dual band, so 2.4 and 5 gig Wi-Fi frequencies, and it has 2 lines and 2 SIP accounts. So obviously that means you can have multiple calls on the phone or be transferring calls. It's a simple and manageable and scalable solution, and we'll delve into that a little bit further in the presentation. It provides seamless roaming support. So essentially it allows you to move from wireless access point to wireless access point within an environment and not have dropouts as you transition between those access points. It is compact and lightweight. So anyone that has seen our current range of DECT phones, our smaller DECT model, the DP722, shares the same casing design as this model. So anyone that's seen our other Wi-Fi model, the WP820, this one is a slightly smaller version. It's ideal for enterprise, retail, warehousing, medical, and education environments. And we'll cover off some more of those later in the presentation. And it's also, I would challenge anyone, and I would stick by this statement, it's the most affordable Wi-Fi IP phone on the market. I like to refer to this one as a DECT killer for people that have or people that can't manage with the limitations of a DECT solution. So this just gives a nice little graphics to it. Some of the things that we haven't mentioned on here is it has HD audio. It runs dual mics. We have one on the front, one on the back, which we'll utilize for both speakerphone and also for noise cancellation. It has a rechargeable 1500 milliamp lithium ion battery, which will give about 6 hours talk time and about 120 hours standby. It is user swap out. So you can buy a charging cradle that will charge up to 8 of these batteries at the same time on trickle charge, allowing people that if they're running in a shift environment, they can simply swap out the batteries and keep the phones going. It has a configurable push to talk button. We'll cover that off in a little bit more detail. We've got a 3.5mm headset jack, so people can wear it with the belt clip sitting on their waist and be able to use a headset. And we use micro USB port for the charging. So just a standardized connection on the end of that. So this particular phone will allow people to work from anywhere because, as I mentioned earlier, we support roaming from access point to access point. So we have no roaming limit within the Wi-Fi network. We can go as far as those access points covering a facility. We have dual band Wi-Fi support. So depending on whether we're needing 2.4 or 5 gig, and that may be because we're getting further away from an access point, we may flip between the frequencies. And the likes, so we're allowing that functionality in there as well. We have a web user interface for remote management and configuration, so you're not necessarily needing to configure on the phone itself. You can do that through the web user interface, or you can do it also through GDMS, which is our cloud-based management platform for Grandstream telephony products. It has industry-leading roaming support, which we'll cover off as we get down through the slides. We'll go through some of the standards that it does support, and obviously push to talk. So it is also built for scalability, and part of that is because it is the most affordable Wi-Fi phone on the market. Obviously, that means it is much easier to scale it as a solution within your business. The cost of purchasing these devices is considerably lower, making it a much more affordable solution. It's also scalable because there's virtually no limit to the call capacity on Wi-Fi. So we don't have the limitations that we may have in DECT, where a DECT base station might only be able to take 5 or 10 handsets. This one here, we're just connecting it as a Wi-Fi endpoint to your existing Wi-Fi network. It is important to point out here that it can be used with other vendor Wi-Fi access points. Of course, you can also utilize the Grandstream Wi-Fi access points, which will unlock some additional features. and obviously have some little nice to haves in there that you won't necessarily have with another vendor's access points. However, rest assured, if your customer has already invested in Wi-Fi, they will be able to utilize this product on their Wi-Fi network. If we're needing to expand the network, all we're doing is adding more APs to the customers or access points to the customer's network. We don't have the complexities of either putting repeaters in, which we would have to do if we were running DECT, or putting in multi-cell DECT, which is quite expensive and tricky to deploy. Now, as a comparison to DECT, it has similar costs. So we're getting pretty close to the cost of a DECT solution with this handset by the time you take into account buying a DECT phone and a DECT base station. It's much simpler to scale. As we said, we're simply adding in additional access points to grow that network as we need to. It has greater capacity because we don't have the limitations of how many handsets we can be provisioning onto the one network. And then obviously the quality of the solution we're gaining there because we're able to provide more handsets, we're able to have denser coverage, and we don't have the issue of black spots because we can put in an additional access point without having to go into difficult configuration style that we would have to if we were going down multi-cell DECT. So now we'll move into some of the feature highlights, so some of the highlights of the particular product itself. So seamless Wi-Fi roaming. So what we're doing here is we're offering roaming from one access point to the other access point. So allowing us to roam across the whole facility, as we can see on the graphic here. We have 3 access points. What this phone is allowing us to do is to roam between those 3 access points and roam anywhere within that facility. As we can see here, the roaming protocol that supports is PMK caching, which eliminates the need to re-verify and exchange the authentication when moving from one AP to the next AP on the same network. So what that does is it actually reduces the amount of time it takes for the phone to switch from one access point to the other. So then what we're doing is we're reducing any lag or any pause or cracks or pops that you may have experienced in the past with other solutions. By utilizing this technology, we're doing a much faster handover between the two. And what we're also seeing here is the opportunistic key caching, which sends a copy of this same information from the client to all APs on the network, which basically means we can roam across from one access point to the other point without having to authenticate every time we move from one access point. And as you can see, the last point, it's optimized to always connect the AP to the strongest signal strength. So it's always looking for the strongest signal strength, and it will move itself to that AP that is providing that strongest signal. So you're not having to do that. The system is actually doing that itself. So ensuring that you're getting the best coverage that you can as you're roaming throughout a facility. And as we see here, we've got WMM or Wi-Fi multimedia. Will auto adjust the quality of service on the APs when roaming. So it will prioritize the voice calls and give them a greater level of priority across your network as you're utilizing the access points. So what we're doing is we're making sure that the voice has a higher quality of service level so that we're not having any lag or any disruption within that call. Now, push to talk, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. So easiest way for me to describe this is think of it as a little bit like a two-way radio. So essentially what it is you have a configurable button on the side, as you can see with the orange arrow. It has multiple paging modes, so we can set up different groups or different users. Then what we do is when we push that push to talk button, it automatically opens a one-way voice channel to all the devices within that call group and allows that voice call to be automatically sent out to them without the user on the other end having to answer the phone. They'll simply hear a beep and then they will hear your voice coming out either through the earpiece or through the speakerphone. What it is it is one way at a time. So it's not full duplex, it's classed as simplex. So only one party can talk at a time. So it's a little bit like the old walkie-talkies. What you need to do is have your little bit to say, and then you're either going to have to say over or have a bit of a pause so that the people on the other end can then respond. However, it is a powerful safety and communication feature because it allows you to be able to get a message out to a number of people all at the same time without them having to answer the phone before that can be passed across to them. It's very, very efficient for just a quick, brief blast out of a message that needs to get out to everyone. So obviously we also have the security side covered. So we're combining VoIP and Wi-Fi security. So we're using AES encryption, as you would expect. We're running secure boot. So basically when it's booting up, it is checking versions of firmware and everything. It's checking that none of that has been compromised. We have a unique security certificate per device. We have a random default password per device. Now that is set by the factory. And even when you do a factory reset, it will default back to that random default password, which will be on the device itself. So all of this comes together to provide much stronger security around your communications than what you can get out of the security limitations within DECT. So we're being able to have a much more secure form of communication. So we've got optimized battery life here. So as I said before, we've got a 1500 milliamp capacity battery. We've got a standard talk time of about 6 hours and a standby time of up to 120 hours. Anyone that really wants to know, it's running at 3.8 volts of voltage. And as I stated before, it is a removable lithium ion battery. Now the battery in it is a proprietary battery. It was designed, it's the same battery that we utilize in our other Wi-Fi phone, the WP810. And it's a battery that we designed specifically for the devices to be at a high power level, but a small footprint or small size of that particular battery. As I mentioned, there is an optional accessory, which is called a GMC08. And that is a multi-charger station for batteries. It will charge up to 8 batteries at the same time, and it will keep them on trickle charge so that they're at an optimized level. The dual mic design, as I mentioned before, we've got one on the front, which is for audio pickup, and the one on the back, which we utilize for the noise suppression that we run through the handset. So we're utilizing it to cut out and cancel out the background noise, providing a much more enhanced audio experience for the people that you're speaking to whilst you're on this device. Interfaces and ports. So we've got a 3.5mm headset jack, as I mentioned before, for people that prefer to use a headset. It can be sitting on their belt, on their belt, using the belt clip. Maybe in logistics, we've got a forklift driver and the like, so they can have that just sitting on their belt. And they can have a headset sitting on their head with maybe just the one earpiece and a microphone, and then obviously they can speak hands-free with it. We have a micro USB port, as we mentioned. And then the interfaces, as we've seen before, is the dual band Wi-Fi, which is running at 802.11 AC standards. And we've got the dual mics as well for the pickup. So we've got convenience here. So messaging, we support both voicemail and we'll say SMS messaging, but it is messaging between the devices. It's not going out obviously over the mobile telephony network as we would normally see with a text type message set up on a mobile phone, but it is good for just quick communications between the devices themselves. We also have a call history and contacts list, which we can set that to be an automatic synchronization of them, and we can also do predictive lookup upon dialing so that we can start to determine who you're trying to dial through that call list or the contact list. So we've got multi-charging methods. So obviously we can charge from the base. We can, as soon as we put the device back in the base, it'll charge. And we have a micro USB port on the back of the charging base as well. So you can use the same charger to either plug in, that's supplied with it, to either plug into the base or to plug directly into the bottom of the phone. We can charge from the GMC08, which we can see here, which is the one that I've mentioned before. That'll charge up to 8 batteries at the same time, and we can select the battery level charge that we want them to. So what we can also do here is we can actually utilize it to charge batteries to the optimum level, even from a transportation perspective. You have some carriers that will only take lithium-ion batteries charged to a certain level. You can actually set it to charge the batteries to that certain level prior to shipping these devices out to your customer if you needed to. And then we can also charge it via the micro USB cable, so we can connect that directly into the bottom of the phone and just have it sitting on a desk if we didn't particularly want to use the desk stand. So now we're going to the upgrade, master provisioning and deployment. So we can do remote deployment. So we can connect to a factory default Wi-Fi for batch deployment. We can do auto configuration. We can upload through, well, we can manually upload firmware to the web GUI to upgrade the firmware. And then we can also load a firmware file in the USB flash drive to upgrade without the network. Or the other way that we can manage these devices is we can utilize GDMS, which is a free cloud hosted platform, which allows you to provision and manage Grandstream telephony devices either prior to them going out in the field or once they're out in the field, which will allow you to do things such as configure settings on the phones. You can configure them by group or by device type. You can do firmware updates. You can do remote reboots. You can do all your syslogs and trace routes remotely. So you can capture all that information that's required if a support call is required for any of the devices. That's available at gdms.cloud. It's free, and feel free to go ahead and register for an account for that and have a look at the functionality that's available in that. So now we get to the exterior design. Lots of things and lots of information on this slide. So I'll leave that slide sitting there just for a minute, just so that people can start to see where things sit on the particular phone itself. And then we move on to what's included in the box. So obviously we have a charging station, as we've discussed. We have a belt clip, which allows 360-degree rotation. We have the power adapter, of course. The picture in that one shows a US tail on it. However, they'll be shipped with the tail for whichever market they're shipping into. And then we have the lithium-ion battery. So everything that's required to be able to utilize the device straight away. The battery charger, we'll go into a little bit more detail here. So the GMC08. So as we've discussed, it can charge up to 8 batteries at the same time. We've got 3 charging levels, so it can run at 30%, 60%, or 100%. We've got 8 independent dual color LEDs that'll show us whether the battery is charging or discharged. And obviously we've got some temperature control in there as well, because we're charging 8 batteries at the same time. So we've got some fans that will cool at high temperature if they need. And the device, if it happened to go outside its normal temperature zone, would actually switch itself off automatically. So some of the integrations that you can do. This shows in conjunction with some of the other Grandstream products. So obviously the integration with the Wi-Fi access points, we automatically allow for quality of service, and we automatically adjust the quality of service as we move from access point to access point. As you can see, and they're using the WMM protocols. Utilizing it with one of our door intercoms, we can open doors connected to a GDS device. And we can also utilize it to wirelessly communicate with someone when they're pushing the call button on the door intercom. We can utilize it with the third device across, which is our SIP speakers. So we can create a wireless intercom utilizing the SIP speaker and the WP810. So it allows us to be able to be walking anywhere within the facility, be able to make a call to these SIP speakers and be able to make a loudspeaker announcement across the facility. So that's the 3510, as we're saying there, the GSC 3510 allows us to do an intercom because it is a two-way SIP speaker. It allows the people at the other end to answer back. Or we can just do wireless PA or paging using the GSC 3505 because that's simply a one-way. All we can do is make an announcement over it. And then if we utilize it with one of our SIP IP cameras, then obviously we can receive alerts and alarms from that particular camera. So this gives a little bit of a comparison between DECT and the WP810 Wi-Fi phone. So we look at call capacity. So there's virtually no limit because we don't have a limitation of how many calls or how many of these WP810s we can have within a network. Within a DECT solution, we're typically limited to 5 to 10 concurrent calls in an area or within a base station, and that's purely a restriction on the DECT channels. With the roaming, we have no limit within a Wi-Fi environment. So all we do is we just keep adding access points if we want to extend the coverage, but we don't need any extra equipment to roam within a current Wi-Fi network. With DECT, we're limited by the base station range. Yes, we can use repeaters, or we could use multi-cell controllers and multi-cell DECT. However, that is very complicated and a very expensive solution to deploy. Scalability, with the WP810, it's simple and unlimited. We just add Wi-Fi APs, or we add additional WP810s if we need additional phones. If we look at the DECT, which is very limited and complicated, most DECT base stations can manage 5 to maybe 15 handsets if we're lucky. To scale above that requires expensive multi-cell and repeater systems, and we're typically limited to 5 to 10 concurrent calls per base station. We're going back to the WP810, we're not limited by that because the access points that we're utilizing can handle vastly more than 5 to 10 concurrent calls per access point that we're running in a Wi-Fi network. Mass provisioning, yes, it's supported, including all config parameters on the WP810. To do mass provisioning of DECT, it's a little bit more complicated. It is still possible, but requires a little bit more interaction to do that. If we go down to the security side, on the WP810, we're using bank-grade encryption, so we're using AES, TLS, secure boot, we're using unique certificates, and also random default passwords. And if we go to DECT, yes, there is some security. It's a little bit more limited. Typically, a DECT voice packet encryption is at a lower or weaker level than the AES standards. So some pretty compelling reasons of why you would look at the WP810. Having said that though, there is still a place in the market for DECT. So there is still a usage case for both. So it's not necessarily about just forgetting about DECT altogether. That still has a place within the market and it still suits within customer types as well. Now, if we look at this, so anyone that's seen our other Wi-Fi phone that we've had, the Wi-Fi cordless phone, the WP820, I've put this up to do a quick comparison between the two, between the new WP810 and the WP820. So if we look at some of the differences here, the WP810 supports up to 802.11 AC. The WP820 only goes up to 802.11M. They both have a 1500 milliamp battery, slightly less talk time in the WP810. Part of that is due to the operating systems. They both have 2 lines and 2 SIP accounts. Roaming support, we don't use industry-based standards of the roaming support on the WP820, but it will support roaming from access point to access point. The WP810, as we can see there, supports various industry standard roaming support. The screen size, we have a slight difference. We're looking at a 1.8-inch color LCD on the WP810 and a 2.4-inch color LCD on the WP820. The WP810 does not support Bluetooth, whereas the WP820 does. So with the WP820, you can utilize it in conjunction with, say, a Bluetooth headset and those sorts of things. Voice codecs, they're the same on both. Operating system, as I mentioned before, we do have different operating systems between them. The WP810 runs on Linux, and the WP820 runs on a customized version of Android 7, which is compatible with custom Android apps designed to fit the phone's screen and also lack of touchscreen functionality. The WP820, we have also just recently released an SDK kit for that, for people that are wanting to do some customization around that type of thing. And with some of the other functionality, they both have push-to-talk functionality. The WP820 on top of that brings in an accelerometer, which we can use for some basic man-down functionality. We can do some panic button calls and those sorts of things on them. And down the bottom, you can see the price difference between them. So this is where I say we're starting to get down a lot closer towards the DECT price point with the WP810 compared to the WP820. But trade-off is there are some features that your customers may need, that they may need to step up to the WP820 for. So now we'll do a little bit of a competitive analysis compared to some of the other Wi-Fi offerings that are out there at the moment. So where we're different is the ones that are highlighted in orange. So the Wi-Fi, we go up to 802.11ac on the WP810. The other three products don't. Roaming protocols, we support the PMK caching and the OKC as well. And we also have the pending on the 802.11k and V, which the others don't. Voice codecs, we have some differences in there as well compared to the others. So depending on what market you're selling into or whether there's a requirement from an upstream telco, there may be some requirements in there that you may want to look at from the voice codecs. Push to talk, yes, we support that, and only one of the other models does. AP optimization, so if we pair it with the Grandstream GWN access points, they'll do auto recognition and security optimization. So straight away, they will optimize themselves to work to their best potential if you utilize the Grandstream access points. However, having said that, you don't need to use Grandstream access points. You can attach this device to any other vendor's wireless access points. And because it is a SIP-based phone, it can be utilized with any SIP credentials on any platform that may be being utilized on the back end through either a cloud hosted provider or just a SIP trunk provider. And as we can see there from an MSRP, which is based obviously in US dollars, none of the other devices beat it price-wise. So that's where we start to say where it's the most affordable Wi-Fi cordless phone. But as you can also see, we're affordable, but there is also a number of particular points in there where we still beat the competition despite being the most affordable. So it's not just been about ripping every functionality out of it to get to a price point. It's been designing functionality in there, but getting it to an attractive and competitive price point. So now moving to some applications and deployments. So for businesses and enterprise, it could be utilized for office mobility. Obviously, you have the ability to roam anywhere within the facility. Scalability, you can scale as large as you want, either by increasing APs or by adding as many WP810s as you like to the network. Roaming, so best Wi-Fi roaming support in the industry, as we've seen compared to the others. We're supporting roaming features in there that the other competitive products are not. So streamlines maintenance. So using wireless VoIP eliminates most of the wiring within a facility, It's obviously a lot easier to maintain because all you're doing is pushing out any updates remotely. If people are moving desks or you're reorganizing an office environment, you're not needing to recable. So there's a whole lot of functionality benefits in there straight away. And easy deployment and expansion. You can add a phone simply by connecting it to the Wi-Fi network. I can't make it much simpler than that. Literally all you need is your SIP account credentials, and you need the Wi-Fi SSID and password, and you're good to go and connect. It is as simple as that. In education, affordable. Well, we all know that in education, quite often cost is one of the biggest factors in deciding in which solution they go for. Affordable scalability. There's no barriers to scale. We just add the APs or we add phones. There it is. This is where it becomes easy to work in conjunction with an IT manager within the school because it's technology they understand. Wireless facility control. We can control building access and receive alerts on the WP810, so we can utilize them in conjunction with door intercoms and the likes to help secure that environment. We have roaming support to seamlessly roam from AP to AP in any school, college or university. The beauty of something like this is because it's utilizing Wi-Fi, you can actually put up Wi-Fi access points even out in the schoolyard, and you can have the ability for people to be able to roam anywhere within the school grounds and school building and still be contactable on this particular device. And push to talk. Well, instantly communicate with others, creating a powerful security tool for a school. I don't think I need to expand on that much more, but essentially what it means is if there is a security alert in the school, using the push to talk, you can automatically do a broadcast out to everyone that has a phone within that group, within that school, and they will automatically all receive it at the same time. It's a very effective way of getting information out quickly. We saw before with the SIP speakers, if we had one of those in each classroom, we have the ability to be able to push out to all of those SIP speakers, all within a call group as well. So we can get mass messaging out across the school environment very, very quickly. Retail. So obviously mobility becomes another thing. The staff are able to roam anywhere within the retail environment and still be contactable. We don't need to wire because we're not having to have a physical base station that is connected into the network or connected to an Ethernet port, which is one of the things with DECT you need to do. It needs to have a physical base station connected via an Ethernet port. Roaming for large stores and warehouses, big format retailers such as the likes of Bunnings, the Warehouse, all of those sorts of ones. This provides a solution where they can roam anywhere within that complex and the staff still be contactable. As we see, wireless facility control, similar to as we had in the school, we can have an intercom sitting at the receiving bay door. As soon as someone arrives with a delivery, they push that, and you have the ability to communicate with them straight away and determine who's at the door, what they're there for, and organise accordingly to be able to get there to assist them. And one solution, we're utilising the store's Wi-Fi data network for both data, voice, and potentially video if we're using video intercoms. Potentially we've got all of that running across the one single network within that environment, which is also increasing the ROI that they're having on the Wi-Fi network that they're deploying, and also meaning that there's one network to maintain instead of multiple. If we put in DECT, it's a separate network to maintain. Warehousing and logistics, pretty similar to a retail environment. So the mobility, connected anywhere. Roaming, again, we can roam across from access point to access point anywhere within the facility. Wireless facility control or door intercoms, we have the same with the receiving doors. And push to talk is an important one in this particular environment because it allows people to instantly communicate and push out a mass message, a mass voice message to multiple people within that facility. Hotels is another one. It's easy. So for a room phone, we can easily add and manage the guest room phones on a Wi-Fi network, so we don't need to cable. So we may have someone that's moving from a an analog PBX in such an environment and going to IP. They may not have data cabling. We can provide these within the rooms, and there is no need for data cabling to be provided where that phone will sit. From a staff perspective, we have maintenance, security, housekeeping. They can be roaming anywhere within that hotel complex and be contactable and reachable. Push to talk then becomes another important thing for staff. So especially like a housekeeping or a maintenance perspective, we can just make a quick walkie-talkie type call to either one or multiple people within that environment and be able to get the message out to them very, very quickly. And the beauty of this, as we've said, similar to the school environment, we put up some AP, some exterior APs or some outdoor APs. We can even cover things such as the swimming pool area. If it's a larger resort complex, we could cover things like the golf course and everything and have staff contactable anywhere within that complex just by extending that Wi-Fi network out, becoming very, very easy to provide facility-wide communications. And then obviously medical. Obviously within a medical environment, staff are roaming everywhere. We've got hospital, we've got doctors, we've got nurses. They're going from ward to ward, room to room, bed to bed. So they're able to be reached anywhere within that facility. Push to talk, again, if we need to get an urgent communication out, we have the ability to either one or multiple users to push that out straight away. And then from a maintenance perspective, again, we don't have to do any wiring. So we can put the phones roaming throughout the facility wherever they're needed. Staff can walk anywhere they're needed. We don't need to provide any roaming for base stations for the phone itself. All we're doing is piggybacking off the Wi-Fi network that already exists within that facility. So this just gives a very quick example of a local office deployment. So how someone may be utilizing it. So we've got a PBX here, but we could do the same with a cloud-based PBX. We're putting PoE switches in, we're running the APs, and then from there, what we're doing is we're running either a Wi-Fi cordless phone. The second phone that we've got is a video-based cordless phone, one of our GXV phones, which are also Wi-Fi enabled. So you can still provision them on a desk, connect them to the Wi-Fi network and be able to make voice and video calls over them. Obviously, we're utilizing the same network for data with a laptop sitting there. And then we've also got mobile phones sitting there, which we may have a soft phone client sitting on for the PBX or the cloud offering. And what that then allows is utilizing those devices. All of those devices sit on the one network, but they allow all of the communication requirements that are needed within an office environment to be provided over that single network. And if we do an offsite deployment, as we see here, we can do a similar sort of thing. We can set up PBXs or we can set up cloud offerings. We can set up peer trunks between the sites, and then we can utilize those devices to be able to communicate between the sites, but also then to be able to roam between the sites. If we're using the same SSID at both sites, we can then take a WP810 from one site to the other site and connect automatically to the network and start running, which can be very advantageous. And I'll use the current example at the moment. We've got people working from home. But what may happen is after all of these, after all these restrictions are lifted and people are able to go back to their offices, they may then still keep working maybe a day or 2 days a week from home. If they have an SSID that is the same at home and the office, what they are able to do then is to have a WP810 that they can take with them either to the home or to the office, and no matter which site they're at, they're able to be reached on that same extension number or the same SIP number that they may have printed on their business cards and such. So they're able to be contactable at either of those locations. This one here, as we've said, a mobile office solution. So obviously we've got a PBX in here, but we can do it with a cloud PBX. We have a wireless AP, and then all of those devices down the bottom, we can have hanging off that wireless AP. All of those devices do not need a data cable connected to them. So if we're using the desk phones, all they need is the power supply plugged into the power point, and they can connect to the wireless AP. The WP810, obviously it has a battery in it, and again, you just connect it to the wireless AP. So perfect for a working from home environment and the likes. So if we look here at our wireless access point deployment, so from the roaming perspective, just some little points here. So all wireless APs should use the same SSID. And just for people that don't do a whole lot in that space, or just a quick gotcha, SSIDs are case sensitive, so make sure they're all the same from a case perspective. IP addresses assigned to wireless AP must belong to the same subnet and the same VLAN. The authentication method must be the same on the client and the AP network. And adjacent AP signals must overlap enough so the client can maintain a good connection during the roaming transition. So have a little bit of overlap between your AP coverage so that as you're transitioning, you've got that buffer zone as we're moving from one AP to the next. And that concludes a lot of my talking. Hopefully there's been a lot of information in there that people have been interested in. What I'll do now is I'll throw the floor open to some questions and the Q&A session.
Awesome, thanks Ben. That's a really good overview of the WP810. I saw one question quite early on through the presentation, which was around 3CX integration. So the WP810 won't have been through interop yet because it's only just been released. But in saying that, it will be able to be manually provisioned with 3CX. Our MD uses the WP820 and absolutely loves it. In fact, nobody dare take that WP820 off his desk. So if you need any help with integration with 3CX once we get the WP810 stock next month, Matt can help you with how to provision that with 3CX. So no issues there.
Absolutely. It's pretty simple to set up.
I'm just seeing a question there of, are these phones going to be officially supported with 3CX? They will be. It just comes down to how quickly 3CX do that interop testing, and then obviously when the next version update comes out after that, which will then have that support. But up until then, obviously, as Megan was just mentioning, you'll be able to provision via templates. And then there's one other question here that we've got around a recording of this webinar. Yes, it has been recorded. So after this, I'll be providing that the relevant details of that across to both Megan and Matt to share as well. There was one question of, whether it can connect to Bluetooth headset. The WP810 cannot. It doesn't have Bluetooth. The WP820, which is its bigger brother, does have Bluetooth. So that one you would be able to utilize with a Bluetooth headset.
So just jumping in there with the recordings, we will upload it onto our YouTube page, but we can certainly share those with you, JC, as well, so that you can pop it on your website. In terms of the Bluetooth with the WP820, we have two WP820s permanently in our demo stock, which are available for you to borrow and test and to show to your clients. And as soon as the WP810 stock comes in, we will add some of those to our demo kit as well. And that is purely because these phones are so popular. The WP820s are just flying out the door, and with the price point, the WP810s are going to be flying out as well.
Yeah, the WP820s, we had an amazing rush on them as everyone started working from home. And, you know, I had some distributors were getting orders from integrators of 100 units at a time for the WP820s, even despite their price point. Okay, we've got another question here. Where are we? How durable are they? How durable are they in a warehouse style environment? They've been designed for a drop of up to about 1.2 meters. So they're reasonably robust. There is another model that we're planning on launching later in the year, which will be a lot more ruggedized. However, the more you ruggedize the phone, the more the price goes up. And that other model, when that is released, will still have things such as 1D and 2D barcode scanners and the like. So it's going to move up to the fully ruggedized one. Will move up to more of a mobile computing device versus just a cordless type phone.
Just looking there, Matt, can you comment on stun provisioning?
Yep, so after the phones have undergone interrupts, so stun, using a phone with stun or a session border controller is basically template settings. So once there's a template available, whether that's before the phone goes through interrupt or it's a custom template, or after it's gone through interrupt, it should support stun and SBC, as do the other ones.
Just quickly having a look here. I've got another question around the contact lists and the like. So I'm just trying to see if I can quickly find that.
There's another question here, Ben, around plastic covers. Now, I'm not aware of any covers that are available for the WP820 or WP810 at this point.
No, there is none available.
So I think that comes down to really that these units have been designed for those environments. Obviously, I wouldn't suggest you climb to the top of the ladder and drop the phone, but you know, I mean, I know.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
I know you do,
but for average drops, they're fine. I'm just trying to see. So we've got the call log is up to 100 calls. But we don't actually cover how many is in the address book. So that one I'll have to find out. And I've also just had a quick look now in the protocol standards. Stun is mentioned, so yes, it does support.
Excellent. I think that's all the questions that I can see there. If anybody does have any burning questions, you can zip them through to Matt and I. And if we don't know the answers, we will obviously confirm with Ben around those. But generally speaking, we know the answers to most of these things. We are expecting units to be available during May. Pricing will obviously be dependent on the US exchange rate at that point when it comes through. But there's been some indicative pricing throughout the presentation today. But it will depend on what our exchange rate does because it's pretty weak at the moment. So I think there's nothing more to say in terms of questions apart from thank you, Ben. Thank you everyone else for joining us today. And we look forward to catching you on another webinar soon.
No problems at all. I'll just one last quick one. One last call for any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wind the webinar up.
And I guess the final comment from me is when we get the WP810 stock through, we will advise that through our normal regular weekly updates in the weekly and also via our VoIP update. And as I say, we will have them in demo stock, so we will make them available very quickly for you to be able to get in line to test the new units and be able to start showing your customers what those units look like. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Matt.
No problems at all.
Thanks, guys.
Wind that up there, and we'll get that uploaded to YouTube later today.
No problem.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for attending, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.